So he went into the bathroom and wouldn't come out. Our bathroom door had this little gap at the bottom. I thought, I'm gonna see what he's doing in there. I flipped my phone over, turned on the camera, and he was taking a shower on a video call with her, right there in my house, telling her he loved her. Well, my childhood was pretty normal, I'd say, like most American families. We didn't have a lot of luxuries, but we were happy. Really, really happy. I played a lot with my cousins. My grandma lived in the back house behind ours, and I had this deep connection with her. I loved being at her place because she'd let me help her cook, let me play with her makeup, let me do her nails. We built this really special bond. I'd stay up late watching TV with her, and when it was bedtime, my dad would call me back to our house to sleep. That's just how the days went by. I have siblings, a brother and a sister. I'm the middle child. I've always been someone who cares about everyone in the family, always wanting to help. I'd help my mom with everything around the house. I also helped out my aunts. I remember one of my aunts especially. I'd go stay at her place to help with the kids. There was a time when her husband went to work overseas for a while, and I remember I'd sleep over at her place every night just to keep her company. People saw me as really dependable, I think. I was a calm kid, and I'm still an extremely calm person. I think everyone around me sees that about me, that I'm calm, easygoing. My dad always worked, my mom did too at first, but after she had my brother, she stopped working because then I came along, then my sister, and she became a stay-at-home mom. But she always handled the administrative side of my dad's work. He was in construction and had opened his own company, so she'd take care of the bank stuff, invoices, dealing with the accountant, and I was always right there with her. She'd involve me in all that paperwork, delegate things for me to do because I liked going to the bank with her too. And my siblings were always around, we were always together like that. Because I was a quiet girl, I never really had a lot of boyfriends. I was shy, so I didn't really date. I was afraid to bring a boyfriend home. Thought my dad would get mad. I had my first little boyfriend when I was, 16, almost 17. And I remember my dad didn't like him at all. When my dad found out, I got scared, but it didn't go anywhere. So I can literally count on one hand the little flings I had, but none of them were serious relationships or anything that lasted long. I went to a technical high school, and that's where I met my ex-husband. We became friends, really good friends. He seemed like a guy with a lot of responsibility, and he really was. He worked to pay for his private school tuition, and I admired that a lot. He started coming over to my house, and with that whole friendship vibe, he was super outgoing, so everyone loved being around him because he made people laugh, told jokes, messed around. We started getting closer. He'd console me sometimes when things didn't work out with that ex-boyfriend I mentioned. I'd call his house, and he'd comfort me and everything. Once he had surgery to remove his tonsils, and I remember visiting him, feeding him ice cream because that's all he could eat, just being there for him, as friends. Just friends. And then time passed, and I think more on his end at first. He started showing interest in dating me. So I decided to give him a chance because I thought he was cute, and his sense of responsibility really caught my attention, the fact that he worked and paid for his own schooling. So we started dating, the kind of relationship where you never know what's going to happen down the line, but it just kept going and going. He worked, I started working too. I'd already done an internship at a bank, then I got a job at a college, which was great because they paid my salary and also covered my tuition, so my paycheck was all mine plus benefits. And him too, he got an internship. He left his job at a shoe store where he'd worked weekends, and got this internship really close to where I worked, like 2 blocks away. But he didn't have the benefits I had. What he earned basically just covered his tuition. We were already in college at this point. And I felt bad for him because he'd go to work and not bring lunch. I had meal vouchers from my job, so I'd invite him to lunch with me, and we'd split the bill. I'd pay with my voucher and everything was fine. Sometimes when he couldn't leave, I remember I'd order him a sandwich and have it delivered to where he was working. I also remember one time it got really cold that day and he didn't have a dress shirt to wear to work, so he went without one. God, that killed me to see. That cold and him there without a shirt. At lunch, I went to a store nearby that sold business clothes and bought him a cardigan, something more professional, and had it delivered to him. So yeah, I really cared about him, wanted to look out for him, help him. And we kept studying, dating, time passed. This was all in 1999-2000. He treated me well too, but like I said, he was super playful. So before we were dating, I remember once we left school at night, we studied in the evening, and we'd go to the bus stop together. Once, some kid stopped us and said it was a robbery. I didn't have anything to give him. The kid said, "Give me your chain." And my friend, my ex, he said, "No." And then the kid just left. Then another time in class, I remember as a joke he lifted my skirt. These are things that today I think about and I wouldn't be okay with, but we were teenagers, you know? When you're a teenager, you don't have the same mature reasoning you have when you're older. He could be explosive sometimes. Back in high school, I remember he got into a fight. I don't remember why, but some guy wanted to beat him up. I was still just his friend at that point. And as his friend, I wanted to protect him. My cousin went to school with us too, so we were like, we're gonna protect him. I don't know, we did something and the fight didn't happen. The guy went one way, we left, and that was it. Later, when we were already dating, I remember I bought a computer. I walked into the store and said, "I want that computer." I didn't care about the specs because I didn't understand them. I thought it looked cool, it had this green detail. I said, "I want that one." Bought it. When it got home, the computer started having problems. He noticed and realized I'd kind of been scammed. So he decided to go to the store to talk to the guy. My grandma went with us, I remember that. And I remember he got into it with the store guy because he said the guy was ripping me off, that there was nobody from customer service there, whatever. Anyway, it passed. So we started dating. He'd come to my house. His parents would bring him over. Sometimes my dad would take me to his place. We had a beach house back then, and we'd go there with my parents, and he'd come with us too. We'd hang out at the beach, come back, my dad would drop him off, and we just built that closeness. My dad didn't really talk to him much. I think he was a little jealous, but little by little, my ex won over the family too. His mom was someone who talked a lot, a lot, like she knew the whole neighborhood, just talked non-stop. I never really felt much warmth from her, not even with her own kids. No real affection. And not with us either, honestly, because I saw some conflict situations within her own family. Like she wouldn't talk to one brother, wouldn't talk to a sister, whatever. But it was fine. She had one sister she was really close to, and I saw more interaction with that sister. I remember sometimes when I'd go to her house, I didn't like eating there because I didn't like her food. It wasn't flavorful. I think she noticed that too. So my ex came to my house more often, and we'd do a lot of cooking. I liked to cook, my dad did too, my grandma too, so he'd praise our food a lot. So eating was always more at my house, and I think the affection came more from my house too. My ex-mother-in-law, I didn't feel like she was a very warm person. Didn't see her make much of an effort with that either. And our relationship continued. Working, dating. We graduated from college, he graduated, I graduated. After I graduated, I started working at a bank, an American bank, where I made an even better salary with better benefits than I'd had before. He also got a better job than the internship. His job was really good because since we weren't married, I remember he got an offer where he had to work a totally different schedule, nights, weekends, but he made good money. And saving money, I had my own money. I remember I had a credit letter from a car financing thing, and since I didn't buy that car, my dad used that credit and I took the cash and saved it. So we had our little nest egg saved up. And then, the let's get married conversation came up. Some time passed in the relationship, everything was good, so we decided to get married. We went to the store, bought rings, started wearing our engagement rings. We started looking for an apartment. Started looking on the south side of Boston because it was close to his work, close to mine too. But it's funny, whenever we'd visit places, I didn't feel comfortable there on the south side. It was really far from my mom, we lived on the east side. And I had that attachment thing with my mom, with family. We kept looking, south side, south side, south side. There was one he really liked. Man, he loved that apartment, sent all the paperwork there, but I don't remember why. It wasn't because of bad credit or anything, it just didn't work out for some reason. Then I remember once we were driving back, going down the highway, and we saw these building skeletons. We were like, "Whoa, is that abandoned? Let's check it out." When we got there, it wasn't abandoned. It was under construction. And we went in and we loved it. We loved the apartment, the terms were great and everything. I was like, yeah, I like this place. It was super close to the subway, so we bought the apartment. I worked at a bank, right? So I said, great, we'll put down the down payment, and when we do the financing, I get a special rate through the bank, so it'll work out great. And it did. We bought it with so much joy, then took our parents to see it. My aunt came to see it, all our friends. Come see the model unit. Showing everyone all that excitement like, now we're gonna get married. And I always dreamed of getting married in a church, having a party and everything. So we set the wedding date. I did the party the way I wanted. 350 guests. I remember the cake because I wanted a cake from this specific woman who lived near my house. She made a 77-pound cake, those cakes that are as big as a table, you know, the most beautiful cake. The cake wasn't even on the dessert table display. It was kept in the back and we used a fake cake for show. But I remember one of my dad's employees had to carry that cake in a wheelbarrow because it was so huge. And it was wonderful because we brought our whole family together. My dad's relatives from upstate rented a van to come to Boston. Everyone together, a fun night, everyone had a great time. We got married. I paid for the whole bridal day package, rented the dress, had the party I wanted, got married in the church I wanted. It was a beautiful day, it was hot, it was January, it was amazing. I don't regret any of it because it was a dream. The next day after the wedding, the party continued at my parents' house. My dad made a barbecue, my dad loves to cook. And I remember I got married, so I should go to my house, right? I got home that night and we forgot the key. Where's the apartment key? Nobody had the key. The key was with his friend, mine was at my house. And we had to go back to my mom's house still in our wedding outfits to get a copy of the key. So I saw all those people still there. The next day I came back in my pajamas to my mom's house because I didn't have clothes, didn't have anything at the apartment. Hadn't packed my suitcase for the trip yet. I got there, the house full of people, me packing my suitcase, packed it any which way. We were flying out that night, and we went to Myrtle Beach for our honeymoon. And it was so good, everything was perfect. We didn't have a lot of money, but now I think, God, how did I pull all that off? I think if it were today, I couldn't do it because everything's so expensive. But I'm glad it worked out. Have those memories. Everyone who went loved it, complimented it. Some people talk trash, that's fine too. You can't please everyone 100%. But it was really good. It was 2008. We met in 1999, got married in 2008. So in 2008 we got married in January and continued our life. I kept working at the bank, he was working at another tech company. And we kept working, living that life. We lived really well, we split all the bills, all of them. It's funny because sometimes I go through my old stuff and I find the notebooks where I wrote everything down. Month by month, everything. And the years went by. We had friends, we'd go out with friends, go out to eat, travel. We traveled to a few places, traveled abroad a couple times too, I think. And then everyone started with the pressure. We'd been married 5 years. What about kids? Kids. I wasn't thinking about having a kid at that point. I was 31, and I just felt like I was never ready to have a kid. You never really are, right? And then I got pregnant. I wasn't on birth control because I had migraines and I'd already tried a bunch of things. I even got my wisdom teeth removed because they said wisdom teeth could cause migraines too. So everything they said, take the tooth out, you won't have migraines anymore. Don't take the pill, you won't have migraines anymore. Do this, you won't have migraines anymore. It was all lies. So I got pregnant, and I found out I was pregnant the day his uncle died. His uncle passed away, and he went to help set up the funeral and everything because his aunt was pretty simple, didn't really understand how to handle things. Her son lived upstate, so until the guy got to Boston to sort things out, he and his brother went and took care of all the funeral arrangements. and I started feeling this pain in my back, this weird pain. I was like, man, what a annoying pain. But I knew my period was late about 3 days, but not enough to worry about, you know? And I was like, this is weird, this is weird. Anyway, everyone in his family was sad because the uncle died. And we got home and I said, look, I'm going to the hospital because I have a lot of back pain, I can't take it. So I went to the hospital. I got to the hospital and the doctor asked me, do you suspect you might be pregnant? And I was like, oh my God. I said, it's possible, yeah? She said, because if you are, I can't give you just any medication, we need to rule that out. But I was like, God, could I be? Anyway, she said, let's do a test. So I did a blood test. I was alone at the hospital. Had to wait. Then she called me in and said, congratulations, you're pregnant. I started crying. She said, but why are you crying? You're not a little girl anymore, you're married. But for me, it was shocking to get that news, you know? Anyway, I cried there at the hospital with a doctor. She said all that stuff. I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I was in shock. I swear I was in total shock. I went home, my ex-husband was in the bedroom lying down watching TV. I told him I was pregnant. He was so happy. I say that his uncle's death was the quickest mourning period ever in that family, because he immediately called his mom. When he went to his mom cried. I told my mom. Then we started telling our friends, and our friends came over to our place that same day, you know? And I was in shock, just sitting there, everyone celebrating, and I was like, man, a baby now? And I still hadn't processed that information. This was a Sunday. The next day I went to work to tell everyone at the company too. Everyone was super happy. It had been a while since there'd been a baby in my family. My niece was already, I think, 5 years old, and this was the first grandchild for my ex-mother-in-law. So it was an easy pregnancy. Thank God, the migraines. I only had one during the whole pregnancy. I didn't have nausea, I didn't have anything. My only craving was to suck on lemons. My only desire was lemon, ice water and lemon. And it was a super smooth pregnancy. I had a lot of fluid retention near the end too, but it was super easy. And here's something that stands out to me now, looking back on our life. On New Year's Eve we had a fight. I don't know why. It was definitely something small, because the thing I'd nag him about was that he didn't help much around the house. I worked outside the home, he did too. And he loved playing these computer games. That irritated me so much. Very likely it was about one of those things. I remember I cried a lot and he didn't even care. We'd planned to spend New Year's at our friend's house. I said I wasn't going anymore and he just went. And I spent New Year's alone. Pregnant, right? And he went. I remember when he got back I was feeling better. I'd cried a lot. My head hurt a little, so I asked him to take me to the hospital. He took me, and then after that everything was fine. No more fights. That was in January, New Year's. And our son was going to be born soon. Our son was born in April. And I fixed up his little room the way I wanted to. I've always loved crafts. I made the party favors for my son, I made the door sign for the maternity ward. Always with so much care, so much love, so much attention, taking care of his little things. And in April my son was born, April 9th he was born. Natural birth like I wanted. I wanted to have that experience. And it was really close to his birthday, just 2 days apart, they weren't born on the same day. And it's a whole thing because with natural birth, you don't know what time the baby's gonna be born. I got to the hospital around 5 a.m. and he wasn't born until 5:30 p.m. And there was a whole crowd waiting. Then he was born and I went to the recovery room because it's super exhausting. Then they took me to the room. When I saw that crowd I closed my eyes like, man, when I passed through the hallway, how many people are here? I look horrible, I'm all swollen, my hair's a mess. When the nurse put me in the room I said, ma'am, give me a comb, I at least need to comb my hair. And I got to the room but the baby didn't. And visiting hours were already over. So basically that day nobody saw the baby, nobody. They just saw me. And they could only see the baby the next day because visiting hours were over. And my friends from the bank, man, so many people came, so many. My family too. It was so wonderful, our son's arrival. It's also a new learning experience because babies don't come with a manual. You don't know how it's gonna be. So we went home. The first few days I cried a little because I had a bit of baby blues, which is super normal. I was like, man, am I gonna be able to handle this? I didn't have help from anyone, by choice, because I've always been independent and I like being that way, solving my own problems. So there I was with this baby. I had trouble breastfeeding because my chest got hurt, but even so I didn't give up. I remember him seeing my suffering, everything all sore. I was crying, it felt like a knife stabbing. He was like, just quit, by formula. I was like, no, I'm gonna make it. And I managed to breastfeed my son. He nursed until he was 8 months old. And he was such a good baby, never had colic. Slept through the night. Just the sweetest baby. At 6 months he went to daycare because I went back to work. He also worked. So our son went to daycare and I went back to work and we moved on with our lives. And when my son was born, I noticed a switch flipped in my ex-husband when it came to finances, because now we had a responsibility. We didn't have money saved for an emergency. We had our house that we were paying for. But I noticed that when our son was born, we didn't have savings. And I think that's what changed in him. He started studying and I encouraged him to because in my head, if he's doing well, I'm doing well too and we're all doing well. The way I could help him was by encouraging him, go study. He first did a study abroad program. I totally supported it. My son was about to turn 2. And I was home alone with my son. It was a short time but still it was hard. It was right during a water crisis here in Boston. I remember one day I turned on the faucet and there wasn't even water to brush my teeth. And I had a little kid at home by myself, no dad to help me. I remember I had to buy water to use in the bathroom. It was horrible. Anyway, I handled it, he came back, it was good for him. Then he went to do an MBA, it was every other weekend and once a week too, I think. I remember at a lot of my son's friends' birthday parties, I was alone with my son because he was studying. And people would be like, where's so-and-so? Oh, he's studying. Man, all he does is study, 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 huh? And there I was, studying. Then after that he started on his own learning about investments. Super cool, that's great. He started talking to our friends about it too. We have, because they're still very much my friends, a couple that would come over to our place a lot. They're actually my son's godparents. And he'd talk a lot with them, study, and we managed to improve our lives. And then, like I said, we split all the bills, he started earning more. But him earning more didn't mean I paid less around the house. I kept splitting the bills 50-50ths. Even if you're making less, you're paying 50% to 50% of the apartment payment, 50% of water, electricity, everything 50%, even though I'm making more. So that's fine, we pooled more money together because we were splitting bills. And one thing I want to emphasize here. He never paid for anything for me. When we'd travel, I'd pay my part. I'd buy my own things. I'd get my nails done with my own money. If I wanted to fix my hair, I'd do it with my own money. The groceries for our house I'd buy for us because the benefits from my job, from the company where I worked, covered that part really well. He had his benefits, but they were less than mine in that area. So not even my groceries did he ever pay for, never. He'd even talk about my benefits. How good they were. The health insurance we had too because we had his and mine, but he used mine because mine was better than his. And he'd tell our friends, yeah, I use hers because hers covers even the best hospitals. And he really did use it. Everything was fine. And I took really good care of him. I'd take him to the dermatologist for his skin. He started getting a little bald spot. Let's go check that out. I even remember them joking because the doctor said, oh, you have to use a cap that plugs into the wall to stimulate the scalp, and he got home like, nah, I'm not using that, no way. I take him to the nutritionist because he'd gained weight. Come on, let's go to the nutritionist. I saw a nutritionist. Let's go. He went, started taking care of himself. I'd make his meal prep containers. I'm super organized with everything, clothes, everything. I even took a professional organizing course because I liked it, because I love it. So the clothes were all arranged like a rainbow, the drawers too, you know? His clothes, mine, my son's. The closet's always super neat. Food, since he always praised my cooking and I like making our food, I'd make it. Leave everything organized in the freezer. Open the freezer, pick what you want to eat. There was meat, fish, everything you could imagine. It was all there, just defrost and eat. Anyway, some time had passed. He'd saved up money, started studying investments. Money starts growing. We lived in a relatively small apartment. 700 square feet. Our family had grown and we had a dream of living in a bigger apartment. To have a bigger room for our son, a bigger room for us, a space to work too, a patio area to host friends, which is what we love doing most, getting together with friends. Anyway, next to our place there was a factory that they eventually tore down, and we saw they were going to build apartment buildings there. We were just waiting in anticipation, and when it came out we went. Like, let's go check it out tomorrow. It was a Saturday. We already had the realtor. We went. They called us gold folder, as they say, because we were some of the first. He negotiated and negotiated and negotiated and managed to work out some deal, a payment plan and everything. So we sold our apartment, and in the same condo complex where we lived, we rented another apartment until the new one was ready. And then the pandemic hit. And then, oh my God, and now we're all stuck inside the house. Pandemic, right? But thank God the apartment we were in was a little bigger than the one we'd been living in. It had an extra room that we could turn into an office. I started working from home too, he did too. Everyone at home, my son doing school at home too. One thing I want to make really clear here. He was always a really good dad to my son, really good. He was super involved in my son's life, took really good care of him, did a lot with my son, took him to get haircuts, to hang out, to play. We traveled a lot with my son. There's this resort ranch upstate that we'd go to. My son loved that hotel. My son would turn into a little rancher because there was a little farm there, so we'd go there, spend vacations and everything. And then the pandemic came and we started working from home, all that stuff, but everything worked out too. We got along great. I'm not gonna say I think there's no such thing as a perfect couple that doesn't fight. Our arguments were always about the same things. Him helping with household chores and him needing to stop gaming because sometimes he'd play too much, in my opinion. And that bothered me because I also wanted attention. Even though we got along, I felt like the computer and I were competing, and sometimes I had the feeling the computer was winning, you know? And he really was playing because I could see. The door would be open, nothing was hidden from me. And that irritated me deeply. God, how that computer irritated me. I wanted to throw it out the window. And like, I worked outside the home. Besides working outside the home, when I got home I still had the household stuff. So I wanted him to have that awareness too sometimes. Hey, she works too, let me do something. The times he did it, which were rare, it was because I asked or because there'd been some stress, you know. But he was that kind of guy, you know. When the toilet paper runs out and there's just the cardboard roll left, sometimes he'd put a new roll on top of the cardboard. He wouldn't take it off, you know. So that would irritate me sometimes. A lot. But anyway, talking about my son, he was super present in my son's life, always was. He'd take him to school because his job was more flexible. He worked from home. He'd get my son ready for school, comb his hair. Every Thursday he'd play soccer with the dads from the school where my son went, and my son would go too. My son was about 7 at this point. And after soccer they'd get together for dinner to eat. The kids from the other parents would be there too. All good. We'd hang out with those families too, get together for barbecues on other days too, at other times. And everything was fine. And I remember he'd say to me, "Man, so-and-so complains so much about his wife. She's so annoying." Then, so-and-so also complains a lot about his wife. Like everyone's wife was annoying. And he'd tell me this and I was like, "Well, what do you say about me?" "No, I don't have anything to say about you. You're chill, you're cool, you know." Good, right? And I am chill. I didn't nag him. There was never any suspicion, never. Not on my part, not on his. Our phones, like he knew my password, I knew his. He'd leave his WhatsApp logged in on the computer. Sometimes I'd look because it was there. I'd use the computer and it was open. Sometimes in the parents group there'd be a bunch of nonsense, photos of women. But that never bothered me because it was random stuff. But to say I ever saw him do anything. Never saw anything. And life went on, the pandemic, all that stuff. At that time we had someone who helped us around the house, so it was a little easier for me, but even so I liked to cook our food. That part stayed with me. And we continued, and the new apartment was being built and we'd check on the construction. We were doing well financially, both of us working. Let's hire an architect to do our apartment, because we'd prepared for that. We bought the apartment. Let's do everything nice so we don't have any problems, so everything fits. We hired this architect and she did everything from our dreams. Everything beautiful, everything impeccable. I saw those drawings in the meetings we'd have with her. Everything so pretty. My son picked out his room, the cutest thing. And then there was this one time, this was in April 2022, March or April, we went to have a meeting with the architect to talk about stuff. And I noticed he was kind of rude to me, like he was the only one who wanted to talk. I thought that was such a lack of respect, especially in front of someone else. But I didn't say anything there in front of the architect. Afterwards I said, "That was horrible what you did." But anyway, I think it was actually a little before March 2022, because in March 2022 I was let go from the bank where I worked. I'd worked at that bank for 17 years. And when I was let go and told him, I cried. He said, No, don't be like that." He really comforted me. He could see it had been really stressful for me there too, it was exhausting. He said, "We're fine, we have money saved, we can handle things until you find a new job. Take a break, now we'll travel." And we really did have plans to travel to the US, do a trip and everything. And that made me feel super secure. I was like, oh, thank God he's giving me this support, because like I said, I split all the bills with him. So, okay, I got my severance from the company, the apartment stuff was happening, the construction. My dad works in construction, and so he had my dad do some things there too. It was a way to support my dad and help him earn a little money too. My dad was super excited about the apartment, that renovation that, my God, seems like it's never gonna end and costs so much money. And we were in that anticipation, every moment it's something. Let's choose the floors, etc., etc. Finally, in December the apartment was done. It was finished. Beautiful, it turned out beautiful. This was 2022. It was finished. And that's when I told him, "Look, my money is gone now." Because from March to December I'd been maintaining myself as if I were still working, because I still had money, splitting bills and everything. That's when I told him, "My money's gone. Starting next month you have to pay for everything yourself. I don't have half of anything anymore." Anyway, then Christmas came. A week before Christmas, he told me he had to go to a happy hour for the company, because he only worked from home most of the time. He'd go every Wednesday to the company for a meeting in the morning, and then after lunch he'd come home. And he really did go because he'd bring the cookies they gave him for my son, the little candies they'd give out, and he'd give them to my son. So, okay, he said, "Oh, there's gonna be a happy hour." It was end of the year. Oh, okay, happy hour. So he went to this happy hour, came back. And the next day we went out, me, him and my son, and I smelled a perfume in the car. I said, "What perfume is this in here?" And he said, "I say this now because now it makes sense to me, because in that moment I didn't suspect anything either." He said, "A bunch of people were in here, I gave a bunch of people rides yesterday. And then it passed, I didn't think anything of it." Okay, Christmas passed. We spent Christmas at my parents' house. We were super tired because we just moved and putting everything in its place and organizing it all. I was exhausted. New Year's. Let's do New Year's at our place. So we invited my parents, his parents, to come over too. My sister came, my niece. So I organized, he made a barbecue. We were breaking in the grill there. He made barbecue with my dad. We spent New Year's. The next day we went to lunch at my parents' house. And then I noticed him in the following days. Oh, one detail. We didn't go to my parents' house on the 1st. We went to lunch at another friend's house on the 1st, another couple we'd always go to. And there I remember us talking, and he said to a friend of ours, "Family is everything to me. My family is everything to me." Because recently, I think about 2 years before, his brother had separated, and he criticized that brother to an extent you can't even imagine. Like he talked, he judged, but like he disagreed with everything the guy did. If the guy was stupid, how could he do that? You don't do that. Like he was indignant. And I thought that was wonderful because if he was indignant, he'd never do the same thing, right? Anyway, New Year's passed, we got home. I wanted to invite some friends over to our place. He was like, "I don't want to invite anyone." Okay, fine. We were gonna travel, it was like the 1st, and on the 10th we were gonna travel to that resort ranch we always went to, and we'd arranged for 2 other couples to go with us. And then I noticed him being weird, kind of quiet with me, not talking to me. And then I remember he told me, "This weekend there's an implementation at the company. I have to go in on Saturday, work Saturday afternoon." I was like, okay. I think it was January 6th. So he went, worked, came back exhausted, tired, he came back. Then the next day we went to my mom's for lunch. And I thought it was weird that he got all dressed up to go to my mom's. But he got dressed up in a way that I was like, "Man, I'm embarrassed." So I told him, "I'm gonna get dressed up too because the way you're getting dressed up to go there." Because I'd go to my mom's, you know, when you put on flip-flops. He got all dressed up, put on cologne, put on a nice shirt. We got to my mom's, we ate lunch, and he said, "Oh, I'm gonna go to my mom's." Oh, he didn't like going to his mom's. Detail. Always when we'd go to my mom's. My mom lived near his mom's house. He never wanted to stop by his mom's beforehand. He'd say his mom was annoying, she'd get to be inconvenient sometimes, you know? An example is when my son was born and I was there trying to breastfeed my son. She came with her finger on my chest like, "He's choking, you know?" Put her hand. She was very inconvenient. Anyway, so that day he said, "Oh, I'm gonna go to my mom's. You're not coming. Neither you nor David are coming." I was like, "Why not?" "No, because I'm gonna have a conversation with her. Because I can't deal with her apartment anymore." His mom had an apartment near where we lived and it was rented out. And she was always asking him for help because the 5th floor was leaking, whatever. "I'm gonna go talk to her because I can't deal with this anymore. I'm gonna have a conversation with her." And he went alone. But God is fair, right? About 20 minutes passed, and his mom, without meaning to, without knowing anything, called my mom's house, because she had a lot of contact with my mom. They got along well. But hey, he left to come here. Oh, he's not here yet. He's not there. No. So I started calling his cell phone, he didn't answer. Then he got there to her place. I don't think he was there even 5 minutes. Then he came back, told us he'd been stopped at a checkpoint, that he was at the checkpoint, whatever. He came back. And then I went to my mom's to take advantage of that day to pick up a suitcase, because it was at my mom's and we were gonna travel. So he went up to get the suitcase with my sister, and he complained to my sister that he couldn't stand me anymore, that I was unbearable, that he felt like returning me to my mom. But I only found out about this later. Anyway, and we got home, him with that indifference, not really talking to me, not saying anything. And I was like, "What's going on? You're not talking to me properly. Whatever. And then it passed. Then there was a day I had a doctor's appointment in the morning. I think it was a Monday. So I went to that appointment and man, I thought he was unbearable, but I didn't know what was going on. And there at the appointment there was a cafe downstairs and I said, "Well, I have therapy today. I'm gonna do my therapy from here, I'm not going home right now. I'm fed up." So in my therapy, talking to my therapist, I was like, "Man, I don't know what's going on with so-and-so because he's being really annoying, I can't stand it, he's not talking to me. I don't know what's going on. And I brought up that situation to her. And then I went home, and that day when I came back after the appointment, I pressed him. I said, "Dude, what's going on? I don't understand what's happening. You're not talking to me, you're being weird, you're distant." And he said, "You really want to know what's going on?" I said, "I do." He said, "Then I'll tell you. I'm tired. You don't value me, you don't want me. I don't want to continue anymore." Detail. It had been 15 days since we'd moved into the apartment. "If you don't change your ways, I'm out of here. I don't want this situation anymore." And my world, the floor opened up beneath me because I was like, "What? Where are you getting this from? What's going on?" He didn't say anything and threw all the blame on me. He said, "That trip I wanted to," he said. "So we're not going on the trip anymore." I was like, "You choose." So I thought hard. I said, "Well, it's better if we go because we already have our friends going, it's already paid for. Maybe we're just tired, stressed." Okay, so we packed up our things, we went on the trip. On the trip he was normal. He'd say he loved me, he was crazy about me, whatever. And I was like, thank God, I think he had an episode, it passed, everything's fine. We stayed there on the trip, enjoyed it with our friends, we came back. Good trip. But on the way back home he went silent again. That thing where it's like the person's traveling. I tried to talk to him and he wouldn't talk. Okay, we got home. Our wedding anniversary was coming up. And he didn't change. When it was the day of our wedding anniversary, I asked my mother-in-law to take my son to stay with her so we could try to do something, because he'd said the problem was with me, that I didn't value him, that I didn't want him. So I said, "So today let's do something different, let's go out to eat." Okay, my son left. I wanted to go somewhere nice. I said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Look, wherever you want to go is fine with me, because if we're good, the place doesn't matter. What matters is that we're good, because we make the place." And he said, "Then let's just stay around here." So we went for a walk in a park near our house. There was food at home, there always was, so we had dinner. And then he started talking to me about divorce again. I was like, man, he didn't forget about this. He'd say to me, "How are you gonna manage if I leave, if I go away? I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna teach you about investments." He said, "I'm gonna help with our son. I'm gonna help with the bills. We'll split things." I was like, "But where are you getting these ideas from? Why do you want to do this? I don't understand what's going on." He said, "I can't. I can see you made an effort, but I can't. I can't." After that day it was just downhill. My money ran out and then came the transformation. Anyway, after the day of our wedding anniversary, he told me, there was this day, he said, "Oh, I'm gonna have a happy hour." He made a point of showing me. "Look here, see the invite." When someone starts making a really big point of showing you something, such and such day there's gonna be a happy hour, there'll be some people from overseas, I have to go with them. Whatever. And another thing that caught my attention, he started dressing up, started wanting to wear his watch, which had a dead battery for a long time. He went and fixed his watches, started dressing up, whatever. And another thing I noticed, he'd run, right? He'd run a little, walk too, and he'd go out to walk at night. And he started taking a lot longer to come back too. But like if it was 1 hour he started doing 2, and I thought that was weird. And then after the day of our wedding anniversary, he'd already made it clear to me that there was no fixing it, that he'd already made his decision. And I didn't know why. And I'd press him. "Is there someone else? Are you with another person?" He'd say, "No, I swear to you there's nobody, there's no woman in the picture, there's nobody in the picture." And I said, "It's not possible that a person we spent so much money on a house like this, who wanted it so badly, and now out of nowhere started with all these stories, something's going on." And I thought he was having that midlife crisis thing, something like that. I even made a doctor's appointment for him. I made an appointment, but he didn't have any problem because he didn't even go to the appointment. I think he was laughing at me. Like he knew everything he was doing. The only one who didn't know was me. Anyway, I started telling my mom, telling his mom, all our friends. I didn't understand what was happening. My world was ending and I didn't understand what was happening to me. And always protecting my son. Then after that day when he said he was definitely separating, then you have to tell our son. He didn't think twice. We were sitting like this on the couch, he got up, my son was in his room playing. He grabbed my son, put a chair in front of us and said to my son, "We're separating." And I said, "We're not, you're separating." "I'm not separating. You made this decision." My son panicked, my son started crying and that just destroyed me, you know? Seeing my son cry. There was a photo of my son on the fridge with Santa. He got up to rip up that photo with Santa. My son felt awful. Anyway, that day passed. Then he had another implementation to do over the weekend that he said was going to be during the night, and he said, "You know the cell signal doesn't work there because it's inside the company's server rooms." But I was already starting to get suspicious of him. And my dad was at our place that day. It was a Saturday, a week after our wedding anniversary. My dad was at our place because a leak had appeared and we didn't know where it was coming from the AC unit. So my dad went there to check. And he got ready to go to work. So he said. And I saw that he hid his backpack, but I found it. Inside his backpack where he kept his computer, I found a shirt, $500 in cash, the case for his contacts. Because he wore prescription contacts, it was in there too. I think there was a toothbrush. And I saw it all hidden, but I didn't say I saw it, but I saw it. But right then my gut was already saying, "There's a woman here." And when he was about to leave, my parents were still at the house. I said, "Mom, I'm gonna walk him to the gate." Because he was going by Uber to the company. So I walked him to the gate and he was really cold with me, really distant, not moved at all. Then he left. Before he left, he told me, "I'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. It'll be until 4 p.m. the next day." This was a Saturday noon. I made lunch, he ate lunch, got ready, left. But I felt really bad. It was horrible for me. And that night I went out to eat with my son and he called really quick, just voice. "No, the signal doesn't work here. Whatever. And what caught my attention was him giving an exact time when it would end. Usually when there's a problem like that, there's no exact time when it ends, right? So anyway, the next day, 4 p.m. sharp. And his phone was off because I'd send messages and nothing. The next day he came back with his face like, "I did something." And I saw that he did something because he came back super tired. Then he went to take a shower, he lay down, and I saw his shirt full of glitter makeup, you know? But I didn't confront him. And I looked at the backpack. The money wasn't there anymore and the shirt he took wasn't there either. Anyway, I went to lie down with him for a bit. It was afternoon. I wanted to talk to him. He was super rude to me, saying he was tired, that he'd worked all night. And he was super rude to me, but because he didn't want me getting close to him. Anyway. And then after that, one thing that also caught my attention was him saying to me, "You don't have to wash my clothes anymore." He'd never turned on the washing machine, but then I think he had some guilt, like, "I'm doing something wrong and she's still washing my clothes." He wanted to learn how to use the machine, how to turn it on, how to put in the detergent, the amounts. He wanted to learn to make some foods he didn't know how to make too. And I said to him, "But look, I never washed your clothes out of obligation. Everything I did for you until now was always out of love, not out of obligation. It was because we're a couple." Anyway, after that it was just downhill. He started saying he had more events at the company. "On such and such day I have an event, I don't know what time I'll be back, there'll be people from overseas. Whatever. And on that day I was already really bad. His mom was there with me too. And I'd call him, he wouldn't answer. Then he sent a message to my son. "Look, Daddy's not coming home today." And he didn't come back. But the thing is, I don't know if it's a characteristic, it seems like when men do wrong things they start leaving a lot of evidence. And we had a phone at home, a device we used for banking apps. And inside that device was his Instagram, his email, and the TollPass app too. So I accessed his email. There was nothing theoretically, but I saw a folder there, and I decided to go into that folder. And I found a receipt for a ring bought in cash on January 5th. Remember, he went to work on January 6th? On January 5th he bought a ring at Tiffany's, paid cash. And I saw that on his TollPass. He was in a town upstate that had nothing to do with his company. I went into his Instagram, started looking. He didn't follow many people, very few. I was looking one by one. When I saw one I said, "It's this one." I don't know why I said, "It's this one, babe." And then I started looking at the stories. When I saw this person's stories, I saw a toast, just a toast, and I saw his hand. I saw his hand. So like, if the person has nothing to hide, why does only the hand show up? I recognized his hand, the pants he was wearing, and the shirt he was wearing. And I called him, he didn't answer, and I started getting worried because he'd said he wasn't coming back and everything. And he wouldn't answer. So I was freaking out with his mom. "He's not answering the phone, he's not answering the phone. Where is this man? Whatever. I even called his brother. Look, he left yesterday, said he was going to a happy hour, but he's not answering the phone, he's not responding." I spent the whole night awake, couldn't sleep, couldn't close my eyes. And the next day I took my son to school. He was going to get back in the afternoon because the town was far. I checked the town upstate, far as hell. And he said to me, "Oh, I drank, so I slept at a hotel, that's why I didn't come home. Leave me alone, I'm not married to you anymore." Then it was just humiliation. He said he didn't owe me any explanations anymore, that we were already separated, whatever. He said, "I'm leaving." It was a really tense situation in the house because he wouldn't give me any explanations about anything. He'd just go out. Then there was this one day, right after those days, I was at home and he showed up with a real estate agent at the house so the guy could take photos of our apartment and list it for sale already. I was like, "What? We're gonna sell it now to split everything." And I had that anguish, that horrible feeling inside me and everything. And I had a course to take. That day I went to take the course, but my head wasn't in the course, I couldn't focus. And I had the option to do it at home. The next day I decided to do the course at home. And then he went into the bathroom and wouldn't come out of the bathroom. And our bathroom, the door had a little gap at the bottom. I said, "I'm gonna see what he's doing in the bathroom." I flipped my phone over, turned on the camera. He was taking a shower with her on video call inside my house and telling her he loved her. He said, "I love you, I love you, I love you." I have everything he said recorded. I have proof of what I'm saying. 'Cause I started recording things because he'd call me crazy, that I was crazy. Where are you getting this from? There's nobody in the picture. But I was crazy, right? Anyway, when he came out of the bathroom I said, "Was your shower good?" He didn't say anything. What? I don't owe you any explanations. Funny thing, on my bathroom door my pink robe hung. So he put his phone on the windowsill. She could see him and she could see my robe hanging there. Babe. And then there was no other option, he left. He decided, he rented an apartment and he was really cold, you know? The day he left, he packed his things, he put everything that was important to him in the suitcase. Everything. His clothes, his colognes, his computer, the liquor. I mean liquor, the wines he'd bought, because he'd developed a taste for wine too, which I don't know where that came from. He took the glasses I'd given him. I'd given him a Father's Day set. A set of glasses, barbecue utensils, a really nice kit. He took that. And so he grabbed and took everything that was important to him. The clothes, colognes, that barbecue kit, and the wines and liquor, and the car, and left. And then he came up to me and said, "Can I still give you a hug?" He had the nerve to say to me, "Can I give you a hug?" My son, I protected my son so much. I never had arguments in front of him. I wanted to protect my son as much as possible. That day when he came into the bedroom and said, "Can I give you a hug?" I didn't even answer, but I was lying in my bed. Remember the day he left? If I'm not mistaken, it was February 3rd. Really fast. It was really fast. I think it was February 3rd. The same way he came into my room, he went into my son's room and said, "I'm leaving." Said it to my son and left. He left. He left. I didn't know what to do anymore, who I was, because he'd put me in such a vulnerable situation. Because I'd left my job, I wasn't working. And here's a detail. In that period before he left, remember he supported me when he said, "Oh, don't worry, we're fine financially, whatever." He started pressuring me to find a job. "You need to find a job soon, you need to work, you need to work." And I'd say, "Leave, help me fix up my LinkedIn, do stuff." He'd say, "You don't know how to fix your LinkedIn. What's happening? Like you were one person." He'd tell me I didn't want to grow in my life, that I wasn't ambitious, you know? Like I didn't want to do anything. But dude, everything you are today, everything you have today was because I supported you, because way back when you didn't have meal tickets to eat, I'd split mine with you. Anyway, he didn't help me with anything, didn't help with my LinkedIn, just put me down. Said I had no drive to do anything, that I never wanted to grow. Like I wanted to stay stuck, like that was my only option and I chose to be that way. He put me down completely and left. And then every once in a while he'd show up at the house because he had a key. And he'd go see my son, but he'd just come in. And I started taking my son to a psychologist to understand everything that was happening. My son started crying too because reality was setting in for him. And my son started having some insights too, like remembering things. He said to me, "Mom, remember how Dad would go on walks? A few days ago I went walking with him and he ran into a friend of his on our street. She was with her daughter, we went into the ice cream shop. And he told me he went to school with her when he was a kid. But I don't know who she is. Oh my God, David, I wonder who it is." And there I was with that woman. It's her, it's her, it's her. And he'd still come to my house, and I had hoped that he'd realize he was making the wrong choices and everything. And one of those times he came over, he said, "Let's go to your mom's, I want to go to your mom's." So it was me, him, and my son at my mom's. Everyone feeling terrible because he'd say to my mom that he considered my mom more than his own mom, that he had more respect for my mom than his own mom. He had this really strong relationship with my dad too. Before we moved, a few days before we moved to the apartment, he turned to my dad and said, "Old man, get ready because I'm gonna buy another apartment and you're gonna renovate it just like this one." Okay, we got to my mom's, my mom made coffee. Nobody understood anything. I didn't understand anything either. And I was hoping he'd say something. Then my dad came, he said some things there that I don't remember, and he said, "Yeah, I'm not seeing just one woman, I'm seeing 5 women. He said that to me, to my dad, to my mom. My son was sitting there too, my niece was sitting there too. "It's not one I'm seeing, it's 5. Anyway, I don't even remember what my dad said or if he said anything. We went to his mom's house after that. I don't know what the point was of him doing that to us. And I was so, I don't know, out of it. I didn't understand anything that was happening. And then it was gonna be Mardi Gras. And he told me, "I'm gonna work all of Mardi Gras." He was still giving me a few explanations like that. And I said, "Then I'm going to the beach and I'm using the car." He deposited some money in my account. I went to the beach with a friend and her husband and her kids. And I stayed there. It was the worst trip I've ever taken in my entire life. 'Cause all I did was cry. My son was so sad too. My son would just stare at nothing, just stare at nothing. I felt his pain. And I didn't know what to do to take away that feeling. I was suffering twice there. My suffering and my son's suffering. Mardi Gras passed, which was horrible for me being there. It was suffering. And going back to my house was horrible. Walking into that house that had been so desired and at the same time was destroyed in such a short time. And my son would go to school and I'd stay home crying, and I just kept deteriorating. Horrible. And then I found out there really was this person. And I found out because a colleague of mine had a fake Instagram account and she went into this woman's Instagram that he'd gotten together with, and she saw some posts. And she posted during Mardi Gras when he said he was going to work. He stayed here in Boston with her because he knew I wasn't in Boston. They went to this fancy place, but he didn't appear in the photos, but his hand appeared, his watch. And she posted something like, "My love." I was like, man, my love. But it's already like that, already my love in such a short time? And I kept seeing more and more things. The ring, remember the ring? I researched the code on Tiffany's website, found the photo of the ring, and I saw the ring on her finger. And I remember there was this day I showed a photo I'd managed to screenshot. It had her and I think 4 other friends. And I said, which one is her? Because I didn't know yet which one it was. And he'd say to me, it's one of them. He'd say like, it's one of them but I'm not gonna tell you which one. And then I found out it was her because, anyway, my son told me. It was this one I saw at the ice cream shop. This is my dad's friend who was at the ice cream shop. So think about it. She lived in a town upstate and I live here in Boston. What are the chances she just happened to be on my street in that ice cream shop? It wasn't a coincidence. He called her that day to come to the street to meet my son. She saw where he lived. She saw the car he had. We had a car, it was a nice car. Or apartment too. I think that made her eyes light up, right? Anyway, and he started living a life he never had. On that phone I mentioned we had at the house, in the Google searches I found searches like how to have a life of luxury. Something like that, you know? And there were only searches for top-tier places. And then I had to go find a lawyer because he wanted me to use the same lawyer as him. Of course I wasn't gonna do that. At first I was falling for everything he was saying. Until there was this one day, a few days before he left the house. I was going to pick up my son and he was already talking about divorce. You know where he went to talk about our divorce? At the bar on the corner of our house, drinking a beer with his lawyer. That's when it clicked for me. I said, I can't have the same lawyer as him because look how he's treating our divorce, having a beer with him. How am I gonna trust that? So that's when I went to find a lawyer. That first one didn't work out either. And then talking to my therapist, telling her everything that was happening, she said, I have a good lawyer, he'll help you. He's not in Boston but we can do everything online. And that's when he got involved because after everything he did to me, he didn't have the guts to ask for the divorce, to actually file for divorce. The only thing he did was ask for the visitation issue, to regularize visitation, because he didn't ask for divorce, he didn't set up child support. And meanwhile I was at home with a supplementary card he'd left me with a $900 limit per month. But the grocery card he had, I think it was about $400. And here's another detail. Our apartment was new. We'd lived there together, I think we were there together for 1 month. We were still paying for furniture, the glass for the balcony. And I was paying with checks because the companies didn't accept cards, had to be checks. And the checks started bouncing in my account and my account didn't have the balance to cover them because all our money. Remember he studied investments. Remember I supported him, that I trusted my whole life to him because it was so many years together, all our money was in his possession. I didn't have access to anything. And I'd say, deposit money in my account because I don't have it to cover the checks. The limit's already used up. And if another check bounces it's gonna come back. And I'm looking for work. If my credit gets ruined, this could hurt me too. He wouldn't respond. And I went into despair. And that's when I went to talk to his mom. I said, look, can you put money in my account, lend it to me because so-and-so isn't depositing and it's gonna hurt me. And she said to me, get a loan from the bank. If you want help, borrow money from your dad. But she didn't help me. And I thought, how am I gonna get a bank loan if I'm not working? I might be able to because I had good credit. But next month the payment would be there anyway. Anyway, she didn't lend me money and I was stuck in that limitation, that suffering, that anguish. A friend of mine lent me some money, a cousin of mine lent me some money too, until I filed for child support, which happens pretty fast, and I got child support for our son, which helped a little. It wasn't what saved me. Anyway, and then it was that fight because I didn't have access to the investment statements. The apartment doesn't sell overnight. An apartment like ours. And I think that contributed a lot. And then that pressure started. What did he start doing to me? He started lowering the card limit. When I started receiving child support, he set the card limit to $6. $6. And I still used it to pay for parking. I remember I parked and I was like, let's see how much is on here. And then I went to the grocery store with a card he'd left. You know those benefit cards companies give? The card got declined because he'd blocked the card. And I only had child support. And then all that pressure. Him not paying bills every month. The checks bouncing and he wouldn't pay the phone bill, wouldn't pay internet, wouldn't pay gas, wouldn't pay anything. And everything was in my name coming there. Until I had an idea about the gas. I said, well, if he's not paying, I'm gonna switch the gas bill back to his name. I went to see how to do it. You just had to send everything through the app, a copy of his ID, so I sent it and they put it in his name. And then he got mad because the bill went to him. You know what he did? He cut off the gas. He cut off the gas to my house. It was noon, I was using the stove. That day I'd showered early and I was using the stove. The gas just went out. But I always had my little frozen meals prepared. So what did I do? Stay calm, breathe deep. Heat up our son's food so he can go to school, don't say anything to him. So he went. Then I called the gas company to ask them to reinstall. But with gas it's not like electricity where they turn it on fast. They said, look, it's tomorrow. We can't turn it back on today. Like, oh my God. When my son got home, there was no gas to give him a bath. I had to heat water in the microwave. But I gave him a bath, I managed. The next day the TV stopped working. And my son said, Mom, it's not working. And I already imagined. Didn't pay the bill, cut it off, everything. And I was always having to work around all these situations. And it kept going. And these mean things kept showing up more and more. By then I was sure it was this woman. And it was end of March, late March, he told my son. Look, Daddy's gonna travel for work, something like that. You might not be able to talk to me. And my son's birthday was coming up. He asked if we wanted to do something. My son wanted to have a little party, just for his little friends and everything. And that's when I understood what happened. It had been a few days since he'd seen my son. My son's birthday fell on a Sunday. On Saturday he showed up at the house and I stayed in my room. I'd already shown my mother-in-law who it was. She said, no, he's not with anyone. Where are you getting this from? You know, because she fell for his story too. I was crazy. Anyway, he stayed at the house, he arrived, talked to my son in the living room. I didn't come out of my room. And then he came to my room to ask how I was. I weighed 110 pounds. I'd lost so much weight, so much. And he asked how I was. I barely reacted. He said, oh, go buy some meat, I'm gonna grill some meat. We had a grill. So I went. While I was at the grocery store, my son said, after he left and everything, Dad was going through everything in your closet, I don't know what he was looking for there. Anyway, he grilled meat for my son and I thought that him being there, I thought something had happened again, that he'd want to come back. So I said, well, he made the little meat there, we ate. And I said, look, I'm gonna go out so you can spend time with him because it's been a while since you hung out with him. He misses you. My son, before this, every night he'd sleep hugging the photo album he had, he'd cry at night, and he even started wetting the bed because this really messed with his emotional state. Something he never did even when he was potty training, you know? So he made the little barbecue, stayed at the house. And I left. I remember I went to the church door to give thanks. But actually I think God always hears what will truly make sense for us. Anyway, I came back home. He was sitting in the living room with my son. I made coffee. I drank a cup, gave him a cup, and I went to my room again to leave him alone with my son. Then my son went to shower. And he came to my room, he lay down, I was lying in bed, leaning against the headboard. He lay down next to me and he started hugging me, he kissed me and he said to me, "I miss you so much. I miss your smell. I miss you." And that for me, I said, my God, the Lord heard my prayers. He's gonna come back now. And I know we stayed there. We ended up sleeping together that day. And I was like, thank God. And I remember he got his t-shirt dirty and I saw he kind of freaked out about it because he wanted to wash it, dry it. I said, "But you have another t-shirt here, put it on and go." He didn't want to. And I remember he told me he missed me so much that he was sorry, but he didn't know if it would work if he came back to me that day. It was that day, this was April 8th. And he left. He said, "Tomorrow I'll come back in the morning to have breakfast with you guys." Because it was my son's birthday. And for me, that day I felt great afterwards. I was like, oh, thank God, he's gonna come back, he's gonna come back. The next day was Easter too. It fell together with Easter. So I set up a table, breakfast for me, him and my son. When he rang the doorbell, it was him, his mom and his dad together. They walked into my face. I didn't know where to hide my face because he didn't say he was bringing his mom. Anyway, he pretended like nothing had happened the day before. I called him into the room. I said, "What was yesterday?" He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "What?" "And everything you said to me yesterday." "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "You're not doing this to me." "I don't know what you're talking about." So I called his mom into the room. I told her everything he'd done. She said, "No, he wouldn't do that to you." Can you imagine? He wouldn't do that to you. No. I said, "But he did. I'm telling you, and he did." And she already knew he was seeing this woman. Because remember he told my son, "Daddy's gonna work and the cell might not work where I am." I found out he'd gone on vacation with her and with her daughter days before. To the coast, to a super expensive hotel. And I understand that he paid for it. How do I know he paid? Because later I got the credit card statements. So my ex-mother-in-law, she was complicit because she knew everything he was doing. Anyway, her knowing all of this, it was my son's birthday. My son was super emotional that day, cried a lot, didn't want to go out. And I decided to make lunch because up until then I was deluded. And I say I sat at the table with Judas, because my mother-in-law knew what he'd done, that he was with this woman I was talking about. He knew what he'd done to me. And even so they sat down to eat the food I made for them. And I'd arrive late every day to pick him up, and he was already in that anxiety thing. What if my mom doesn't come? Is my mom gonna leave me here too? And the company too, like the atmosphere there wasn't very good. I needed to work, but it wasn't helping me, it was hurting me more than helping me. So I had to make a decision. I said, I'm gonna have to leave for my own good and for David's good. Anyway, I left there. This was August. And my son's birthday. I'm sorry, Children's Day was coming up. I said, what am I gonna do for Children's Day for this boy? And he wanted a PlayStation. He was gonna get the PlayStation for Christmas that had passed. But we couldn't buy it because it was sold out. My ex-husband even went out to buy it, I searched. No, nowhere had it because I think it had just been released and we couldn't find it. So that passed, we gave him other things and it was all fine. And Children's Day was coming and I said, what am I gonna give this boy if I don't have a single dollar and I'm not working? My dad said, buy it, I'll pay. I said, no, I'm not doing that. So what I did, I remembered the Barbies. I remembered my Barbies, which were already collector's items. And I listed my dolls. I sold my dolls, my Barbies. 3 Barbies I sold. I think each one was $1,700. And he'd see me packing my dolls and he'd say to me, but you love your dolls. You're gonna sell them. I said, yes, because it doesn't matter. I've had them a long time. And I bought the video game for him with the dolls. And he didn't know. And I couldn't wait for Children's Day. The box arrived, I bought gold wrapping paper for him, wrapped it up. It was a Friday, I remember, because Friday is our junk day. I say it's the day to eat fast food, eat pizza and everything. So I ordered McDonald's. When it arrived, I said, "Go down and get the food. I'm not going today." And when he went down, I put the box right under the TV. When he came back, he saw that box. He said, "What's that?" I said, "It's for you." When he opened it, I have the video recorded because I left my phone recording. This boy cried so much, so much, so much. He was so emotional, so happy. He'd hug me, he'd kiss me. It was so gratifying that even though I was in such a terrible, bad situation in my life, I could find ways out of things, you know? And even with his dad having so much, being with all our money, even with his dad offering, there'd been vacation before this. His dad showed up and said, "Pick where you want to go. Say where you want to go and we'll go." He said, "I don't want to go anywhere." He wanted to stay with me. And I said, "But son, I can't take you out, I can't take you on vacation. Your dad can." He said, "But I don't want to go. I want to stay with you." And we'd go to the park every day. Every day we'd go to the park. I'd bring a little towel for us to have a picnic. I'd bring juice, bring little snacks, and we'd sit there. And time kept passing and we'd see the crazy life his dad was living, the exorbitant spending he had on his card, the parties he'd go to because that colleague of mine had access. He'd post. He started making a point of posting things he never did before and praising this woman, saying she was empowered, whatever. And that was destroying me. And time kept passing and we were in that thing without money, without being able to do things until the divorce finally came through. They did the division. But when he agreed to do it, we reached an agreement. He made one demand. "You have to move out of the apartment. The apartment has to be empty." It hadn't sold yet and I wasn't working. And I said, "My God, what am I gonna do?" I had no other option because I needed access to the money to move on with my life. I said, "Well, and the division is always like that, right?" Since he never showed me the statements for us to do the 50-50 split, I had to give in. I said, "Okay, what you're offering me, it'll let me move on with my life and it's fine. But I'm sure it wasn't 50%, it wasn't. That's very clear to me." And when I had access to the money, he said, "You have 30 days to move out." And I said, "Man, I'm gonna have to look for another place. How am I gonna prove to someone renting an apartment that I'll pay if I'm not working?" Thank God my dad was able to be my guarantor. I rented an apartment. And I went to get some things we had to take there, but to pay him half, right? He charged me even half of our son's bed. Our son's bed. I had to pay 50% of the value of the bed to be able to take it. But I paid and I took it. I took the bed, took the fridge, took the microwave, the washing machine, and my bed. That's all I took. But I had to pay him for everything. And I moved into an apartment that didn't have a closet. Less than a year ago I'd paid I don't know how many thousands to furnish an entire house. And I was moving into a house that had nothing. No closet, no table, nowhere to put the TV, nothing. And I had to figure it out. So I managed, fixed it up a little bit. It was a place I didn't like, I didn't feel good there, but it was the only place I could get. And I always thought, it's temporary, it's temporary, it's temporary. And always asking God to help me, to give me strength to continue. And thank God I got a job. I got a job. It was really special because it was right around Christmas and I think it was a gift for me because I wasn't expecting it. You think no company's gonna hire you during the holidays, right? And I was hired. I was hired after that, after a year, okay? Like, I left the apartment where we lived in 2023, spent all of 2024 in that struggle with intensive treatment for my son, psychologist, psychiatrist, therapy, you know? He was hospitalized. Me also rebuilding myself, me studying. And then all that he said to me, that I wasn't ambitious, that I didn't want to. I was reclaiming myself. And I did it with the help of friends from college, reconnecting with these people, you know? And I realized that everything he said to me wasn't about me. It was about him. It was like he was looking in the mirror and talking about himself. It's not about me he was talking about, it's about him, you know? And with the help of this friend of mine, she said, Danny, I think you have so much potential. I have a degree in executive secretarial studies. And she teaches at a state college in Boston. And she said, come give a talk to my students. I said, me give a talk? She said, yeah, come on. And I said, I'll go. So I went and I gave a talk to the students in the executive secretarial program at the college. And after that she called me like, now let's do a workshop in another place, this one's paid. I went, did a workshop that was super awesome too. She said, now I have another challenge for you. The program coordinator there in executive secretarial studies. She's writing a book and she wants co-authors for this book. And I want you to write a chapter of a book. And I said, oh man, it's really hard, I don't know if, she said. You can do it. So I went. I'm a co-author of a book also focused on the secretarial studies field that I wrote. It was the book launch. The most important person in my life was there watching, my son. And I'd look at him, he'd clap for me, send me hearts. It was the most beautiful thing for me. And I feel so proud of myself because even without money, and money is super important for us, right? Because it brings dignity. I knew how to deal with all these situations, knew how to make good use of everything too. And going back to talk a little about the cruelty because I told you about the spending he had on the card, which was exorbitant, with a person who wasn't part of his life, right? And there on the card where I was an additional card holder, I'd signed up for LinkedIn to look for work. And I remember once he said to me, you think I'm obligated to pay for your luxuries? And I thought, LinkedIn, since when is that a luxury? Dude, do you realize I split my lunch with you? That on a cold day it was me who went and got you a blanket, that I'm the one who supported this house so you could study abroad so you could go to your MBA. What good were all those diplomas of yours? None. For you to be this empty person with nothing to offer. His money, for me, never did I ever see the color of his money, ever. He was never someone who'd give me jewelry, you know? Because okay, give a blouse, give shoes once in a while. Okay, but to treat me to a restaurant when we'd go, afterwards I'd worry. If it was too expensive I'd have to pay half. So many times maybe I'd be like, oh no, let's not go, because I knew I'd have to pay half. Or how many times did I not go on trips? I'm sure there were trips I wanted to go on and he'd say, I don't have money. Go and pay. And I'd go and pay. And I'm so proud of myself for having, even in pain, gone after my goals, never let go of my son's hand for a single moment. Not for a single moment did I let go of his hand. We're a really strong partnership. I love him to death. And I got the job. At the end of 2024 came the answer from the job. I took a lot of courses too. I invested a lot in myself. I invested in my personal image too because when I look at my pictures from before, I was someone who didn't take care of myself. I didn't wear bigger earrings. Everything was those tiny little ones because they didn't take effort, because I was always so busy with the house. I had laundry to do, I had laundry to iron, I had food to make. I had my son to take care of. So I'd wear everything that made things easier for me. I didn't wear makeup, t-shirts always, you know? And today I take care of myself and I see that I didn't have time for myself, because I dedicated myself 100% to our family. So I don't regret anything I did, nothing I did. There was once I ran into him inside our apartment that he made me move out of. The apartment was closed for almost a year with nobody living there. So he made me go into a rental with our son to satisfy his ego, because he knew I wasn't working. What did he want to do to me? Always corner me. Always corner me. Like, the more I corner her, let's see how far she'll go, let's squeeze and see. And what I find most interesting about this is that behind this was a lawyer who was our friend. More his friend because he wasn't my friend at all. And he considered this guy a friend. And I think, dude, this guy has a son the same age as our son. Is this what he'd do to his wife too? And there was this situation that now I'm remembering, when we were still there in 2023, when I was still confused about what was happening. Her sister called me on my cell phone to confront me, the sister of the woman he got together with, saying that my marriage had been over for a long time, that I wouldn't admit it. Like, who is she? Who are you to be calling me saying this? You know how long I lived with him. What is this guy telling this family? Because, see, I think like this. The day I actually find a person I think is interesting to be part of my life, if I find out she has kids and the kid doesn't live with him, I'm gonna find that really strange. I'm gonna say, something's wrong there. Because my son's dad went 2.5 years without access to my son. Because he'd say my son wouldn't go with him. Because I wouldn't let him, because I'd hide him. Everything was me. Everything was me. But not because of the things he did, not because he got another woman, not because he cheated on me, not because he showered on video call inside my house. That's not the reason. The reason our family ended is not the reason my son didn't want to see him. The fact that my son knows the woman he took to the ice cream shop to meet him is the woman he got together with. None of that was a reason for him. The reason was always me. I'm the one who wouldn't let him, I'm the one who was bad, I'm the one who was being manipulative, I'm the one who was doing parental alienation, I'm the one who was crazy. But I was so crazy, to the point that he trusted and left our son with me to take care of. Then I'm not crazy anymore. Then I'm not crazy. Then it's all fine. This is very, very curious. And that's okay. I thank him today for the fact that my son spent all that time with me, because time doesn't come back. We can't buy time to go back and live all that, you know? And every day my son says, I want to stay with you. I thank God. That to me is priceless. Nobody can pay for that. But the day I find someone, if that someone has problems with his ex, calls the ex crazy, that the ex is crazy, she made hell in my life, I'm gonna be suspicious because I know what I went through and I know everything he did to us. Everything really affects me because today I'm very different from everything when it happened. Maybe way back I wouldn't have been able to tell any of this here because I'd just cry, I'd be desperate, because when I got married believing it would be forever. I swore before God that it would be forever. I saw my parents getting married, being together to this day. So my idea of family is happily ever after. And that's okay to be like that. But when you go through this, it's really hard because it's not just a dream that ended. Friends change too. Many people got close to me just out of speculation to find out what was happening. I don't know if just to find out what's happening or to learn something, but they distanced themselves. You know, I'll tell you that 90% of the friends I had, I don't have any more today. And I think the ones who stayed, those are the real friends. So all of that hurts. There are also moments, there are places we go that bring back a lot of memories. There are smells that bring back a lot of memories. There are places that bring back a lot of memories. But I think God is very just, that He'll always make things right, that maybe He saw these things that for me weren't so harmful and He said, I need to get this person out of this because she doesn't deserve to go through this. And that He has much better things for me. And I have no doubt about that He has better things for me. So much so that the fact that I overcame, that I did things people underestimated that I'd never be able to do. And I did them, and I know I'm going to do more because I keep fighting for all of it. I know I have a really strong force inside my house that pushes me to go out every day and fight for everything I still want to do. And I've already done wonderful things with my son. We traveled abroad. It was an adventure for me because everything we do for the first time after divorce is really challenging because when we're together, we know we have that partnership and everything. But when I decided to do this, it was all that excitement and everything. But when I got inside the airport, I said, my God, what did I go and invent? What am I doing here? And I said, I'm here with a human who depends on me 100%. And we went. We went to stay with friends, his godparents, who now live abroad. And from there we went to New York too, which was the most wonderful thing I did with him. Taking him to places I'd been when I was pregnant with him. When I got pregnant, I had a trip already planned. I didn't even know I was going to get pregnant. And I took him exactly to the places where I took photos. The belly didn't even show yet, but I said, I have this photo here. You were inside my belly. Let's take a photo here again. It was wonderful. It gave me butterflies, but we did it. I managed, and he'll remember this for the rest of his life, I'm sure. And I told him, look, I'm coming here with you. I want to do many more trips with you. We're already planning other trips, but I also want to come here with my grandkids, because I want to be that grandma who takes the grandkids to the mall, who takes them to school, who travels. And I want to come here with your family too, because I'm sure it's going to be wonderful, that you'll have many good memories of me. Anyway, he's rebuilding with his dad now. I notice there are still some little things. I don't know if it'll ever be something that'll go back to how it was before because a lot got broken. There's a lot of hurt. I don't know if one day he'll be able to sit and talk man to man with his dad about this. I don't know. I think there's still not that much intimacy, you know? The connection is kind of loose, kind of shaky, you know? The plug isn't connecting very well. I never turned my son against his dad. On the contrary, I always encouraged, go be with your dad. Even because at the time I was without access to money, I said, I can't give you what he can. But even so, he didn't want to go. And always talking. He wouldn't answer the phone because his dad would send messages. He didn't want to respond, he wouldn't answer. He did the same thing with his grandma. And I think the issue with his grandma was because of the police episode. His grandma even says I hit her, that I assaulted her because she pushed me the day I wanted to protect him so he wouldn't get in the car. But she says I pushed her, but I didn't push her. Anyway, I think what's missing there is a little empathy. He suffered a lot and there was a lack of that care, not looking at his pain, understanding, giving comfort. And I always encouraged. And so much so that I always encouraged that now during vacation this year I encouraged even more. I said, look, I don't have vacation now to go out with you. Talk to your dad, work something out with him, go out with him. But he thinks when I say that, he says, you're discarding me, right? He thinks I'm pushing him toward his dad, that I don't want to be with him. But it's not that. It's because I'm sure his dad is important to him. It's not gonna change. There's no such thing as ex-dad, ex-mom, ex-sibling. Family is family forever, right? Regardless of whether we like it or not, what happened. So I noticed that now he's trying to get closer to his dad again. He's going out a little more with his dad. Some weekends he stays with his dad. Some Thursdays he goes out to play soccer with his dad like he used to do before. And I'm always there encouraging, always trying to remind him, do such and such thing. But some days there's not much conversation. It doesn't help for me to want to talk about that subject with him. He goes quiet. He just goes quiet and doesn't really engage with it much. Well, today I'm working, studying, with a lot of plans still to be achieved. I'm sure I'm gonna make it because I proved to myself that I'm capable. Nobody can tell anyone they're not capable, because that capability is inside each person. And you just have to want it. You just have to want to get out of that place, move yourself and make it all happen. How did I achieve this? With God's strength. I held on to God a lot. My son is proof of that. He knows that how much I prayed, how much I sought God. Exercise. I went after exercise even when I didn't want to do it. I went and did it because that helps our mind a lot. Therapy, I was already doing it before all this happened. And I think that helped me so much because if it weren't for therapy, my God, I don't know what would have become of me. It's a place where I can take all my complaints, and where I can get direction for it too. My family also really important in the whole context. In the hardest moments there were my dad, my mom, my aunt, my friends too, those who really stayed, reached out a hand and are still here. I'm sure that everything is a matter of time for things to fall into place. When all this started, I'd hear a lot of women say, oh, it passes, it'll get better. And I'd question, pass soon, why is it taking so long for me? But it's because our timing is different. Everything needs to be lived. Everything needs to be processed so that everything actually falls into place, so the dust settles and we move on with life. Anyway, what I want to leave here is, for any women who are in this same situation, hold on to God, hold on to something you like to do. Even if you don't like it, insist on doing it, because staying inside the house, sitting, lying down, not wanting to do anything, I'm sure that won't lead anywhere, won't have any effect. So, did you like Daniela's story? Share this video with everyone you care about. Comment to let me know what you thought. Remember, this is a support and comfort channel, so please always be kind and careful with your words. Want to tell your divorce story on our channel? Just fill out the form in the video description. And the next story is Anna Paula's, who had 3 kids, 3 marriages, and one hell of a comeback. You can't miss it. So subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And do you already know our new channel? It's called Overcomings. It's emotional and inspiring stories of women who overcame a huge challenge in life. Every Tuesday there's a new video. There's a link for you to subscribe here in the description.